Welcome to my art room. This is probably my favourite room in the flat. I love being in here. It's where I feel most creative. I'm obviously surrounded by all of my art materials, sewing stuff, fabric, photography stuff, paper, paint, clay. The opportunities are endless in this room. When I moved into this flat 3.5 years ago, just like every other room, this one really needed some love. The plaster walls were all fucked up. There was multiple years of peeling wallpaper, carpet was gross, there was some weird shelves over that side of the room. Pretty much everything needed doing. I stripped the wallpaper off the walls and those got re-skimmed. I pulled up the carpet and the underflooring, sanded and painted the floors, sanded and painted everything else, and moved my stuff in. Originally this room was going to be a spare bedroom, so I did have a bed in here, but since I moved just before COVID really kicked off, I never really got the chance to host, and it was just a purposeless room with a bed in it. And then I started working from home, so then I moved a desk in here, started working in here, and eventually it just didn't make sense to keep the bed. I'm not a social person, I rarely host, and when I do, the living room is a fine place for people to stay. So yeah, this became my dedicated workspace, art space, and it's now filled with all of my materials. I've moved it around quite a few times. I've added stuff over the years. Obviously, when you move in somewhere, budget doesn't allow you to just stock a home straight away. You get bits over time. And slowly I've been collecting furniture pieces and other things that work in this space and that I really like. I'd say this room is 80% there in terms of how I want it to work, function and look. So this video is going to be me finishing things off and pulling it all together to make this room a perfect 100 for me. So let's start with a quick run through of how the room looks now and chat about what's working and what needs changing. If you watch my bedroom makeover video, you'll know that I am a big fan of a spreadsheet to-do list, so I'm going to pop one up on the screen now that we can run through as we chat, just to indulge myself. So let's go. To your right as you walk in, this is what I call the big flat items storage section. I just have a selection of half-finished paintings here, things to frame, cardboard and other miscellaneous crap. And does it work? Yes, it does. No change needed. I also have a couple of vintage wedding dresses hanging here. The one on the right was my nan's from the 50s and the one on the left is 1970s, which I bought in a charity shop because I thought it was beautiful. Next up I have this bamboo shelving unit, which I think is originally from IKEA, but I got it from Facebook Marketplace. This was actually one of the first things I bought when I moved in. I like this because it's nice and deep, so it's perfect for storing fabric or other bigger projects. I use the top surface of it for storing miscellaneous unfinished projects, which works well enough, but it turns out I really like to mass produce multiple things concurrently, so I could really use some extra storage for this kind of thing, which I think I can make room for elsewhere. Here I've obviously got my desk with my computer and my printer. I have these two IKEA pegboards on the wall, which I think are currently being very badly underutilized, so I need to rethink how I'm using them and also maybe DIY some additional fixtures for them. Next, more storage, and I'm going to be trying my most ambitious paper mache project to date. I want to build some chunky shelving in this corner, which will hide my printer a bit and add lots more surface options for chucking stuff. This is kind of what I'm picturing at the moment, but I have no clue if I'm going to be able to make it work, so stay tuned for that. Underneath the desk we have this sad mishmash of cables, my internet router and my bins, which I also think could use some DIY organisation, so we'll add that to the list. I've got these nice salmony pink linen curtains hanging up, which are Habitat originally, but I got them secondhand on eBay. I really like these, but I just need to shorten them and add some sort of tie-back solution to the side. Opposite the desk I have a couple of IKEA Billy bookcases, which hold a load of my old sketchbooks, stationery and art materials, which just need a bit of rejigging and reorganising I think. I think this corner works great overall, and just like how that space behind the door is the perfect storage spot for big flat things, this gap between the shelves and the chimney breast is the perfect space for storing long cylindrical items, like these large paper rolls and old artwork. The only thing I would like to do here is add some sort of stopper to the front of the gap to stop the rolls falling down, which they sometimes like to do. Next up, the fireplace and the chimney, and the only real thing I want to do here is find or make a piece of art for this annoying gap in my gallery wall. I put all of these other pieces up over a year ago, and for some reason I just never filled this gap. Speaking of shit on the walls, I also need to finish off this border that I started over a year ago as well. I have more of these vintage word cards, so I intend to fill it all up. This built-in cupboard is original to the building and had a clothes pole in it when I first moved in. I ripped this out and had a builder install shelves, which obviously provides great storage options. The name of the game in this room is storage. I'm a bit of a hoarder when it comes to craft materials for projects that I imagine that one day I'll make. And if I'm going to allow that lunacy to flourish, I need to also make sure that things stay functional and organised. I've been using this space at the top of the cupboard for storing more materials. I've got some wool up there, wood, quite a lot of frames, and it's a great out of the way spot for this. But at the moment it's looking a little bit messy, so I've got a plan for another bespoke paper mache storage item. This room is going to be a shrine to paper mache by the end of this video. Finally, for this cupboard, I just need to hem and rehang this curtain and possibly add some jazzy details to it, but I'm not sure on that yet. Stay tuned. Finally, we're back over by the door, and this is an area which is in a little bit of flux. I've been trying to clear out my wardrobe recently and have quite a few clothes and things to sell. Because this wall's opposite the window, it obviously has the best natural light for photography. So I quite fancy the idea of turning this into a permanent photography space. But how that's going to look is very much TBD, so more on that later. So now you know what the room looks like and we have our spreadsheet set up. It's time for me to get going on the actual projects. So that is what you're going to see after this. Go! So the first project I'm going to be tackling in this video is my pegboard. As I said in the intro, this is the IKEA Skadis pegboard. I have two of the larger sized ones, one on top of the other. When I bought this, I did also buy some of the fixtures that IKEA makes specifically for this. So I've got two of the kind of pen pots, lots of these little hooks. I bought way too many of these. Some longer hooks and some clips. And when I bought this, I thought I would be using it all the time for my most used items, but actually ended up filling it with things that are not that practical. Like, it's quite full, but it's not full of useful things. The only things that I regularly reach for on here are my fabric scissors and my palette. It's also good to have a place to pin up things that I'm thinking about, so I want to keep that element at the top. Other than that, stuff's just on here because I couldn't think of where else to put it. Like my parcel guide or my spare keyboard, they can be put away somewhere else because I'm definitely not reaching for those every day. So the plan is to rework this and put all the things that I regularly reach for when I'm working at my desk onto here, because that makes the most sense really. I already have quite a few ideas for the fixtures I want to make for this. But before I tell you about those, we're going to get this cleared off so it is a blank slate and ready to work on. Here's what we're working with, and the first thing I'm going to do is pop this in here because the plan currently continues to be to have a giant leg here, but that is still TBD, so just think of this as a fleshy placeholder for now. To start off planning how this is going to work, I first have to think about all the things that I need or want to have living on this pegboard. So I made a list. Pencils, fine liners, Sharpies. These are three things that I reach for all the time, so it makes sense to have at least a few of them nearby. I've been keeping them in this ceramic pot on my desk for a while, which I actually really like, but I'm trying to move things off the surface of my desk and onto the wall, so these can go up, pot included. Next up, we have some stationery classics. Scissors, rulers, tape, rubbers, glue, my pencil sharpener, which is adorable, you will agree, hole punch, stapler, and I also want my paintbrushes and paint palette up there. And it would be handy to have the mug and glass that I use for cleaning my brushes too. Then I'd like to have my little pouch of needles up here because I'm always wanting these. And also I'd like to keep a few of my most commonly used colours of thread on there as well. Then finally there are a few extra tool things that I want to make specifically for the pegboard, so I'll add these to the list now. I want to upcycle this old charity shop frame into a small chalkboard for quick notes and to-dos. I think that'll be handy. I'd like to make a pin cushion, which will be so good to have on the wall because I am forever checking pins everywhere, and if I can just pin them straight up there, that will hopefully save my toes in the future. Then finally this phone holder in the shape of a flame, which honestly is just something I've been wanting to make for a while, so I'm doing it now. I just did the voiceover and realised I'd forgotten all of this stuff. So this is works in progress, reference images, letters, receipts, basically just all of the papery gump that you end up with on your desk. And now let's talk fixtures and where all of these things are actually going to live. First up, I'm going to add a long picture ledge along the top of the pegboard so that I can keep canvases or whatnot up there and make use of the empty wall space above the pegboard as well. Then I'll make two more shorter shelves, one that will go in the centre of the pegboard to hold my water pots, needles and phone holder, and then another one towards the bottom which will be handy to use as a filming ledge and can also be where the chalkboard lives. I've got an idea for a combination stationery / paintbrush holder to go at the bottom as well, and I'll make a thread holder to go at the top. The pincushion will slot straight onto the pegboard pegboard, and I'll keep that at easy reach. And in the corner closest to my computer, I'm going to add a curved shelf which will perfectly cradle my pencil pot. Then I'm going to be using these bits of a rainbow ornament that I've been hoarding to add 2 more curved shelves above, which will offer storage for 2 different sizes of tape. There'll be lots of hooks to store my scissors, my palette, sharpener and rulers, and plenty of clips and other places to keep important papers or reference images. So yeah, this is the plan. I know it looks a bit mad and unnecessary, but this is a creative space, so I think it can afford to be a bit mad at least. I'll be really happy if I can pull this off. Let's get to work. I started off by making the 3 shelves because I figured everything else is going to work around those, so it's best to get them in place first. So I had these, are they MDF particle board? Cheap manufactured wooden strips which came in a box of something that I ordered. It might have been the shelf that I bought for my bedroom. But anyway, it was like packing materials. And I kept hold of them because I like to hoard things and I knew I would use them. I cut the strips down with this unnecessarily large handsaw to match the various lengths as per my plan. Luckily for me, the depth of the strips made them a pretty perfect fit for these long hooks from IKEA, which up until now I haven't had a huge amount of use for. I chunked out the shelves with extra cardboard and used the IKEA hooks as the brackets, which they are perfect for. Once this was done, I paper mache'd over them, which took a couple of days and a few layers. Ding ding ding, paper mache tip. Don't be afraid to go hard on the glue. Use lots of PVA, get each layer soaked when you do it, but allow it to fully dry before you do the next layer. Patience is key if you want a sturdy paper mache item. Anyway, for the central shelf, I added more cardboard on the underside before paper macheing to make an additional small shelf hanging below, which would fit my needle holder purse perfectly. Once the paper mache was fully dry, I did a base coat of white paint and PVA to seal them, and then I painted them all in the same shade of pink that I've been using on everything recently. Which, side note, is because I'm trying to use up paint that I've got before buying new stuff. After painting, I sealed each of the shelves with Mod Podge glue, which gives them a slightly glossy finish and will mean that they can be wiped clean easily when they get dusty. Let's pop them in place. Main shelves down. Next on my list was this curved shelf, my pencil holder. I wanted this to be much chunkier than the other shelves, so I used cardboard, newspaper and masking tape to create a basic 3D shape. I added 2 of the smaller IKEA hooks to the back so it could attach to the pegboard, and made sure to include a lip on the inside of the shelf which would hold my pencil pot in place perfectly and stop it falling forwards. Then I paper mache'd over it, first with newspaper and then with loo roll. I wanted to try out a different finish on this one, and following the advice of a TikTok commenter, I had high hopes for sanding this piece. I didn't think sanding directly over the newspaper would do very much, so I added 3 layers of loo roll and used lots of PVA and water to create a real paste-like consistency to cover the whole thing. This was quite messy work, which means that it was highly enjoyable. Once these layers were dry, I went in with a few different grits of sandpaper to try and smooth down the surfaces. I had in my head that maybe I could get them perfectly smooth, but after sanding for a while, I realised that that was not going to happen, so I had to just let that fantasy die. Turns out I actually quite like the look of the sanded paper anyway. It has a slightly organic, mottled kind of surface, which makes it a nice contrast to the finish of the other shelves. So we're going with it. This then got the paint and Mod Podge treatment, and I finished it off with this rainbow painted lettering as per the plan. Next up I moved on to this, which let's call the combination paintbrush and stationery holder. I've also been hoarding this big cardboard tube, and I thought the curved shape would be perfect to use for the paintbrush pots. So once again I got my horrible handsaw out and chopped it down to size. For the bottom part of the holder, I checked through my cardboard hoards and picked out this small kind of long cardboard box, which had come as part of the packaging for my internet router, I think. I love being able to recycle things in interesting ways, and I would advise anyone wanting to get into paper mache to keep hold of packing boxes or things you find you've got some space, because you'll probably be able to make use of them later. So I just finished the final layer of paper mache on here. You can see I've used toilet paper in all of the kind of gaps to smooth out the edges, fill in corners, as you can see, and it gives it a much cleaner finish. So now I need to let this dry. The benefit of working in cardboard and paper mache for these kinds of projects is that it's sturdy enough to do the job, but lightweight enough to not overload the pegboard, so I don't have to worry that once all of these things are up on there, it's going to be too heavy. It won't. I printed out some inspirational words in the classic Times New Roman font for this one, traced it on and finished it with paint. These two things are supposed to work together and be conversational, I guess. Let's get them up on the pegboard. Today I'm trying to make my thread holder, which you'll see in my plan. I drew looking like this with the threads inside what I imagined would be a paper mache thing. But then when I looked at the actual threads that I have and that I would want to put on this, lots of them are like this. So from the end, if they're that way, you can't actually see what colour it is. And that's ultimately pointless if the idea is to be able to see everything that I have. So I need to do something where the threads can be displayed sideways on to show what colour they are. And the obvious thing to do, which is how thread holders work, is to have little prongs that each of them slip onto. And I guess I could do that with them vertically or horizontally. And I'm hoping for horizontally. I'm not quite sure how I want it to look yet. So I'm just going to play around with the wire and try and come up with something. And I'll check in with you once I've done that. So let's go. Okay, so this is what I've come up with. It's just cardboard from a cat food box, and there's wireframe that each of these slot onto, and it looks like that. It only holds 5, so I think I'll add another one at the bottom, and then it will have 6 prongs, which is enough. I'm going to reinforce it, figure out how it's going to fit onto the pegboard itself and get the fixtures on the back, and then I am going to paper mache it, because what else would I do? Let's be honest, I'm a one-hit wonder. I ended up going for a slight diagonal angle on the prongs because I thought if they were fully horizontal, the threads might easily fall off them. And I think ultimately this was the right decision. So multiple layers of paper mache, and dry times later, I had something sturdy and dry, which I could paint, seal, and now hang. I bought this wooden rainbow ornament a while ago from a charity shop. I think I paid like £1 for it. And as you can see, the blue one, must have been a blue one there, is missing. But that didn't matter to me because I didn't buy it to display as a rainbow. I just knew that these wooden things would come in useful for something at some point. And I finally found a way to use 2 of them. These 2 are going on my pegboard and they're going to be used for holding tape. I'm going to attach them both straight on like that. All I needed to do was figure out how to attach them to the pegboard. Luckily, this rainbow is made of very soft wood, so after creating small pilot holes, I could easily screw 2 small brass screws into either side of each arch. Then I wrapped some wire around these screws and hooked that wire through the holes on the pegboard. This is in no way a seamless or sophisticated DIY project, but it was quick, easy, and it works. In the spirit of quick and easy projects, next I turned my attention to my rulers. This metal ruler was actually a very easy project, seeing as I didn't need to do anything, and I'm just using one of the IKEA hooks as is. My folding ruler was a bit more tricky as it doesn't have any holes or anywhere to hang it from. My plan for this was to make a small ledge for it to sit inside and a holder strap to keep it in place. Once again I turned to my old friend paper mache and whipped this up with wire, paper and loo roll. When these were wet they felt super flimsy and I wasn't sure if it was going to turn out, but once they'd been dried, painted and sealed, they ended up lightweight but surprisingly strong. Encouraged by the success of my ruler holder, I had a change of plan for the top right hand corner of the pegboard. I was just going to use this area to keep some spare clips, but I realised that I hadn't accounted for all of my pins in my original plan. I currently keep my pins in this quite stunning dolphin tin. I wanted this up on the pegboard as art more than anything, and I wanted a way to display it with the image being visible. So similarly to the ruler holder, I whipped up a simple hanging holder, which is just the right size for my pin tin to slot inside and fills up this top corner of my pegboard perfectly. Next up, a short break from paper mache, but continuation on the theme of pins. I'd drawn out this idea for a pin cushion on the strength of the thought process. Pin cushion to pins and needles, to pins and needles, to numbness. This to me makes sense. Here's the drawing again, and here is the real thing. This is a little sewing embroidery project that I'm actually really happy with. I think it came out really cute. And very much like the drawing, which never happens, it's got 2 of the IKEA hooks built into the back, so it slots onto the pegboard with ease. And I can take it down and use it whenever I need to. Another one ticked off the list. Next, I moved on to the hook for my paint palette. One of these plain IKEA hooks hangs it up perfectly fine. Function-wise, I can't complain at this, but I think it could please me more to look at. I made some air dry clay finger hooks for my bedroom last year, and I wanted to carry the finger motif on into this room. So I made this little guy for my palette. It's all moulded around one of these IKEA hooks, and it's been paper mache, sanded, painted, sealed, and he's very kind. Hang my palette up for me. I've been having a problem with my fabric scissors when I've had them hung up on my pegboard in the past. They're pretty big and heavy and sharp, and they kept falling open when I would hang them up on a single hook, which really feels to me like I'm asking to get sliced. And I wanted to rectify this issue, so I made another finger hook, this one being double digited to hold the scissors closed when they're hanging up, and it works surprisingly well. Onto another of my genius inventions, this horizontal finger hook, which might be the thing that I'm most pleased with out of everything. Since I'm trying out this whole TikTok YouTube thing, I now spend a lot of time filming myself doing things at my desk, and I've been struggling to get certain angles for filming. So this finger lives above the small bottom shelf and is designed to hold my phone perfectly in place at a kind of slanted angle to film my desk. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm super proud of myself for this. It just works exactly the way that I wanted it to. So pleased with this. Speaking of this bottom shelf, let's talk about the chalkboard. I have an old frame, which I got years ago from a charity shop, which is the perfect size for this chalkboard. And at the moment, it has a glass front, but we're not going to need that. It doesn't have any wood at the back, so that's what I needed to fix. Annoyingly, I didn't have anything scrap around the flat which I could use that was the right size, so I went to B&Q and I bought this cheap thing of particle board, and I'm going to cut down a piece to size, and then I'll do a primer coat, and then I'll do the blackboard paint. And here she is, all finished. And once again, this finger hook comes in handy, keeping the chalkboard and chalk pen in place when the filming shelf is not in use. As much as I would love to turn every single hook on this pegboard into a body part, I've realised that for the sake of time, I need to draw a line somewhere with this project. So I decided that these small sewing scissors and my pencil sharpener are going to be fine living on a couple of the normal IKEA hooks. So let's get these up on the pegboard too. Next up, let's talk about clips. These are the Skadis clips that come from IKEA for the pegboard, so obviously they fit and function perfectly. As clips, they work very well, and they're really useful for clipping up photos, reference images, or whatever up on the pegboard, so I want to keep them. But I want to give them a makeover, because at the moment they're just kind of plain white metal. They're fine, but nothing to write home about. And I want to do 3 different things on these. So one of them is going to be another finger. Fingers are a theme on this pegboard and in my flat generally. I'm going to start making that one today. I haven't started it yet. The other 2 I have started. So one of them currently looks like this, which is just a circle of paper mache and cardboard. This is going to be a sad face, and then the final one is going to be an ear. And the reason for this is that I was thinking about clips, obviously, and then that made me think about clip-on earrings, and specifically this clip-on earring, of which I have 2, a pair, which I bought from a charity shop when I was about 16, but I've never really worn them. A, because I do have pierced ears, and also because the clip function is quite brutal when it snaps down, and I just found them painful. But I've kept hold of them for whatever reason, and now I can use one of them on this. So this can be a clip of an ear wearing a clip-on earring. Eh? I'm also going to give it another hoop piercing at the top to match mine for a little personal touch. So they're all still going to function exactly the same way. They're just going to be a little bit more silly. It's clip reveal time. And here they are. These are all paper mache again, sanded, painted, sealed, and then super glued onto the fronts of the clips. So they all still function perfectly as clips. They just have this additional unnecessary decorative element. I think the sad face guy will be where I keep any bills or receipts or other upsetting correspondence, like this for example. It's a match made in heaven. And then the other ones can just be for whatever. Obviously with this pegboard, everything on there can be easily detached and moved around, so they'll do different things at different times. But yeah, that's my selection of clips. By the way, I'm speeding through these projects a bit because there are a lot and I don't want this video to just be one long repetitive montage of me gluing things. If you do want to see how I made any of the individual fixtures in more detail, you can follow me on TikTok because I'll be posting videos about each one on there. Thank you! Let's talk about this flower in my plan. This is another paper stuffs kind of storage solution. The idea being that it combines another clip, which is the flower head, and then a stem which has a bendable leaf where you could also slot postcards or something behind that leaf. Eventually I altered the design to have a slimmer stem, more leaves, and a more cartoony flower head. I made the stem with wire and fabric. This is as far as I got yesterday. I'm just sewing on, hand sewing it. It's a bit rough, but everything I make is a bit rough. And repeated my standard paper mache process for the clip. While I was making this, I started realizing how much it was giving egg, so I decided to lean into that when I was painting it. The point of this is to make a place where I can pin up one or two things that I'm wanting to reference or ponder more. So I painted text onto the center of the flower and it's done. That's almost everything on my plan finished and put away, except my flame phone holder. Let's discuss. I am nearly finished with all of the projects for my pegboard, but before I put it all together, I just have a few little bits to finish off and one more thing to make, which is this little flame phone holder, which I mentioned I was just slotting into this project because I've been wanting to make it for a while. And the main reason I want to make this is because I do a lot of filming on my phone, thus it runs out of battery really quickly. So a lot of the time it's plugged in like so. But if I'm trying to prop it up to film, it constantly slops around the place, so that's annoying. So I want to make a phone holder which can hold my phone upright to film, but also have space for this to be plugged in underneath and it doesn't rock about. The plan is to make this out of air dry clay because it's something that I have and I think it will work fine and it will be heavy enough to hold the phone upright, I'm hoping. First, I am making a wire frame for it. So as you can see, I've made the front two little flames, or a very basic version of them, and I just need to make the back two and a base can slot the phone in and make sure that it's the right size and whatnot. The wireframe is important for this project only because it will make it sturdier and give the clay something to hold on to when I put it on, but also I can get the sizing right with the wire and I can use my phone as a guide for that without having to get it all covered in wet clay. So I finished the basic frame and it does look like shit, you're right. But this is how it is. So we got 2 layers of flames and then I made kind of a card base to raise it up to accommodate this hole in the top for the wire to go down, and then a cut out at the back so that it can come out. I think the beauty of just making little things for yourself is you don't have to do them in a perfect way. Just use the materials that you have and try and make it work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like this will turn out alright. The base of my phone holder is dry and this is how it is looking. I'm gonna cover these bits in clay as well. I bought more clay for the job. So I got to covering the frame in air dry clay and tried my best to create a good flame-like shape. Once the clay was fully dried, I painted it with acrylic paint, going for quite a simple cartoony kind of look. I let that dry and then sealed it and then it was done. Here she be. Feels really like solid, which I'm happy about. I was a bit worried that it might be easily breakable, but it is sturdy and it works so very well. And I have so many options for where to have my phone for filming, which is great. And this is going to live up on this shelf. Now that's everything on our plan finished. But that doesn't mean that we are finished, because I have a few last minute additions. First off, this magnetic needle finder, which I impulse bought from a haberdashery because I thought it was cute. And now I have it. I don't know how I ever survived without it before. It's so useful. Anyway, I wanted to keep this up on the pegboard too, so I took one of these little round IKEA hooks and then super glued one half of the needle finder magnet onto this. So in theory, it should never get lost. It is my needle finder. And this one took 2 seconds, which is my favorite kind of DIY. Also, I'd totally forgotten about these IKEA pen pots I had when I did my original plan. So let's shoot to me talking about those. So these 2 pen pots are Skadis ones made for the pegboard. So obviously I'm going to keep them and use them. I always found that they were just a bit too like shallow for things. I don't know, like not quite deep enough to keep things in properly. So I'm just going to use them at the bottom, and I can keep the spare kind of hooks and fixtures for the pegboard in them. I thought about lots of different things I could do to these. Obviously there's so many options, but there's already quite a lot going on the pegboard. So I think something simple is best. So then I was thinking, oh, why don't I just stick a couple of nipple tassels onto the front of these? And obviously I'm going to make them myself. These are cardboard, which I've just made into little cones, and now I'm sewing some scrap chiffon I've got from an old dress, making kind of little round pleats around the whole thing, and then the middle is just going to be the little areola. The nub of the nipple. They're just going to go on the front of each of them. I'll just stick them on there. Once the tassels were finished, I attached them to the front of the 2 pots with super glue and then put them in place on the pegboard. And finally, I made this tiny little devil's ivy plant. For no other reason than I thought it would be cute. It's just a decorative thing with like an air dry clay pot and fabric and little soil and stuff. And it lives right here. I really love how this pegboard turned out, and I think it may be one of the closest things I've ever made to a drawing that it was supposed to look like. I think this looks pretty close to my drawing, and for this reason this project will always hold a dear place in my heart. I think the pegboard really sets the tone for what I want this art room to be. That is functional, organised, but also kind of playful and a little bit mad. And I'm excited to finish off the rest of the room with this feeling in mind. I'm going to end this video here. Even though we only ticked off 1 to-do on our spreadsheet to-do list, it did encompass about 20 separate projects. So I'm going to say it's 1 video's worth. I will be back soon with the second part to this video. I've already got things ongoing, different projects for the rest of the room, and then the final kind of pulling it all together and the reveal. Though I do have a little bit of sad news for you, just to kind of dampen your expectations slightly. The big leg shelf that I was going to make in this corner, I don't think I'm going to be able to do anymore. But we'll talk about that more in the next video. But for now, thank you for watching. Please like and comment if you are inclined to do so, and subscribe if you want to see how the rest of my art room makeover turns out and comes together. Do not do this and try and put a load of heavy books on it, because it won't work.